I'm Katie Kuntz, the editor of Unity Magazine, and I am here this morning with Reverend Charline Manuel, who is the chair of the Unity World Headquarters Board of Directors, and also with Reverend Sylvia Sumter, who is chair of the Unity Worldwide Ministries Board of Trustees. And this is a historic moment for Unity. Reverend Charline is the first African American chair of the Unity World Headquarters. She was elected in 2022, last year, and Reverend Sylvia was elected this year in 2023. So that means this is the first time that both chairs of Unity World Headquarters and Unity Worldwide Ministries have been African Americans, let alone African American women. What were your most important goals and achievements as board members? And I want to say here that Reverend Charline was on the board for 7 years before being elected chair. And Reverend Sylvia was on the board for 5 years before being elected chair. So what have been your most important goals and achievements as board members?
So I was elected to the board with no particular agenda in mind. However, at my first board meeting, I had a shocking realization, and that then became what seems to be my work to do. I was sitting in a board meeting, and the executive team was invited into the space. Lunch was being served to us, and there were maybe 20 of us in the room, and I was the only black person in the room. Until the wait staff came in, and then the wait staff was all black. And I just didn't like the dynamic. I didn't like the look, the feel, and the tone of it. This is at my first board meeting. So I had to bring it up. And I turned to the CEO at the time, and it was before Jim Blake. And I said to her, "Do you see this room? Do you really see this room?" And she was like, "Yeah." I said, No, do you really see this room? I said, "I am the only person of color besides the wait staff. This has to change. This is not the times that we live in. This cannot stay." Then when Jim came, I said, "Look, I gotta be honest with you. This is what it is. It can't stay this way. And if you're willing to work on changing this, you have my support. Otherwise, I don't know if this is going to go so good for both of us." And bless his heart, he was like, no, I agree with you. It needs to change. And he said, "If you'll work with me, we'll get it done." I was like, "Well, let's go to work then. Great." That then became the role that I kind of just took on, because I was the one saying, "Okay, we've got to get some diversity in here. We've got to get some diversity." When I was elected chair, for me, that was sort of a exclamation point on the work that I had done, because Sandra Campbell then came on the board. Now we have James Parker. But so now, I will be terming off the board, and now I kind of feel like, okay, so they're in place, so I can go now. I've done my 2 cents of work here, and now I can go now. And so being chair on this is what my final year on the board. It didn't really hit me after the election was taken. It didn't really hit me. And then Jim spoke up in the meeting, and he said, "Wait, this is historic." He says, "I think you're the first African American, the first person of color to be chair." And I said, "Really?" It just hadn't computed in my mind yet. And I'm not a crier. It takes a serious Hallmark movie to make me cry. But tears just started to come, and I wasn't sure where they were coming from, but to be the first, what that said to me is, maybe I'm somebody's light, so they can see this leadership role is not only possible, it's happening.
And so first I want to thank you for making sure that the history and the legacy of Johnny Coleman and Ruth Mosley, those who came even before me, way before me, that they live on, because it's our history in terms of the movement. So I want to thank you for championing that effort. But for me, what I see is, all I knew was that I was going to be a voice who was willing to speak truth to power. I've seen us grow. I've seen us, from the days of when we were the Association of Unity Churches, and I was on the staff, and I could see and hear stuff that went down that did not sit well with my soul. But I've also seen us try to make better strides in moving towards living out our principles. But I would love to see our churches really embrace what it means to have unity within unity. And I always say in my church, everybody is welcomed in my ministry. I only have one requirement, and that is that you come in love. And if you come into that space displaying anything other than love, this is not the place for you. I would like every Unity church in our movement to be such that any soul, any sojourner on this path can enter into a Unity church and feel absolutely, totally welcomed and seen and valued as a part of that church and that ministry. Not as a person of color, but because of who they are, every soul.
What kind of legacy do you hope to leave in your current roles as chairs? How do you feel you are shaping Unity's future?
I'll go two ways, maybe. The Johnny Coleman Airbnb should be ready early next year, which that will be like a crown. I will be off the board by then, but I know that I planted seeds to get it to that point. And first of all, so that there is always a marker of our history from whence we came. The second part is I serve on the board of the Parliament of the World's Religions. That's my other baby. And I gotta tell you, the first parliament I attended because I had read that Charles Fillmore attended the 1893 Parliament. And when I read that and there was a parliament coming up, I'm like, I need to be there. I'm the first New Thought person to serve on the board of the Parliament of the World's Religions. So I kind of feel like me and Charles Fillmore are on a journey right here.
It's time we take our place on the global stage. We have so much to give and share. We're here to bear witness to the light, but to be the light as well, and bring these truth principles to the world. The time is now, but we better transform this world and this earth if we are to be here, if we're to further life on the planet, and to also create a life for everyone that is, filled with health, happiness, hope, all the wonderful attributes of living a good, decent life. And so we have a role to play, and that is to make sure that our message is not only for our own selves to be transformed, but we have the ability to use our old phrase to create a world that works for all. And Unity has to move beyond its own small sphere of serving itself into now, let's take our place on the global stage of life, and let's add our life to the cosmic collective consciousness.
Yes.
So that's the future I see.
Absolutely.
Wow, I'm inspired. How do you hope future Unity leaders will continue your efforts and pick up where you left off? What would you most like to see done next?
We're at an inflection point, as I see it. Unity, like every other religion at this point in time, needs to make sure that we are relevant to the times. And in order to stay relevant, you got to stay in touch. You can't stay relevant sitting in a building all by yourself, your little community, thinking up, great things to do, and you don't know what's going on in the world. You don't know what's going on outside. We've got to be a part of communities. We've got to be a part of collaboration with other denominations, with other people in the community. There's a whole big world out here, and we have to be a part of it so that we can know what is ours to do in it.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a tendency in Unity, because we have such history with our founders and the teachings of our founders, that we may get stuck in the past, as opposed to taking those teachings, which, if they're true and have truth in them, they should be universal, and we should be able to transpose them in a way that is relevant. I'm a Fillmorian, so I love Fillmore's writings and teachings, but they are kind of difficult sometimes for certain people to really, if you take them straight literally out of the book. They need interpretation. They need to have someone that can refresh it and bring it into a relevant stage. And I know within our movements, for that might be fearful for some people. They may have the misunderstanding that we are casting aside our foundational teachings. And I'm saying no. If there's truth there, the truth is universal and everlasting. And so I just want to make sure that we have a balance in our movement. If we think that ministry is going to go back to the way it was and that we should somehow find a way to bring more people in, that is not necessarily the way of the future. The future is, as Reverend Charline just said, how can we bring our teachings out into the world? I've been in the movement a long time, over 50 years on this path. We're going to have to forge new, avenues, and it's not easy for me, but I recognize that's the path. That's the way of the future. So I'm going to jump right in and see where it leads. And I hope those coming behind me will also do the same.
Yeah.
So the unity, I'd love unity to be here as a movement, from here to eternity.
Well, thank you both very, very much. This has been a wonderful conversation. Appreciate your time and and your willingness to share your thoughts and experiences.
And thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.